Ooh, a spicy question. I
Because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by an author, editor, and journalist, and a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, fresh off the release of her third novel. It's Iman Hariri-Kia. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for being here with me. Let's jump right in. We always like to start with the latest publication, which is Female Fantasy. It's out right now. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Female Fantasy follows a woman named Junie who keeps breaking up with the men that she's dating because she is hyper fixated on the hero of a fictional romantasy series that revolves around sexy mermaids. She is absolutely obsessed with this character. He's completely raised the standards for what she considers she deserves in a relationship, and everyone else in her personal life seems to fall short. But when she learns that the author of the series based that character off of someone that she knows in real life, she decides to embark on an epic quest to meet him and find out if soulmates really do exist. But of course, like any true heroine's journey, she's immediately met with trials and tribulations along the way, and she has to use skills that she learned from reading romance to fight her way towards happily ever after. This book truly was so healing, so much fun to write. It is one half campy, mer romantasy, one half like a true contemporary rom-com, and fully 100% a wholehearted love letter to genre, to the romance community, and to fandom.
That sounds great. So I imagine we can deduce from that you are a big romance reader.
I'm a massive romance reader. I'm a massive fangirl. I think that you can tell that even the teasing and the satire that this book is enriched by, it's so tongue-in-cheek and reverent. It's very much, I'm in on the joke. I'm laughing with you, not at you, because I too have fallen down the rabbit hole of searching for clues in an author's announcement. I too have annotated my pages so much that the ink starts to bleed through and you can't even tell what was originally written on the page. This is truly, this is truly for me like a magnum opus, and also something that I've been meditating on, thinking about my entire life. But the message only became clearer and clearer to me as I started working professionally in publishing. And experiencing the condescension that the romance community is met with on a daily basis.
That's true. Despite it being like one of the biggest, like most thriving genres of publishing.
Despite it being a billion-dollar industry that props up the rest of publishing, that allows debuts and, literary fiction to be tested and sold on mass audiences, that wouldn't be possible without genre fiction. So it's just interesting who is the one doing the finger pointing and who are the ones that are expected to just sort of take it. It's a great study in power structures and power imbalances.
Yes. And that's a whole that's a whole rabbit hole that we could fall down. I want to pick up on, you said that you'd been thinking about this for a long time, many years. This has been sort of like percolating in the back of your mind. But I saw that this came out. So obviously this came out quite recently, October 2025. Your previous book came out in 2024. So it's actually a pretty quick turnaround. So like once everything had solidified in your head, was it quite quick in how quick you wrote the story?
Well, so publishing, or at least traditional publishing, moves monumentally slowly. So by the time readers receive a physical copy of a book in their hands, the author has likely been working on said book for at least 3 years, which is quite crazy to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my debut was published in 2022, but I had been working on it for maybe 5 years, if you consider like the ideation and conception phase part of working on a book, which I definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
And that novel to me felt much more like a throat clearing. I was operating from a place of like anger and vengeance in a lot of ways. I wrote about an industry that I had worked in for about a decade, journalism, and I had a lot of very specific points I wanted to make. And I really wanted to capture what I saw as the truth about the magazine industry, about the direction of media, or at least the truth as I had witnessed and experienced it firsthand. My second novel, The Most Famous Girl in the World, went in a different direction. It was a campy satirical thriller about celebrity culture and parasocial relationships. And it is a wild, chaotic, very funny, fun ride. And I think that when I wrote that book, I was operating more so from a place of fear because I had gone from sort of naively working on my fiction in a bubble of my own making, riding by the seat of my pants, unclear what publishing would have in store for me. Everything felt like an opportunity that could go away at any time. So when I got a second chance at doing it all over again, I was crippled by this anxiety of, who is this for? How do I appease everybody? And the voices in my head were so crowded that in a lot of ways, it took me a while to hear my own. So I kind of went in the opposite direction. I thought, I'm not going to write a book for everyone. I'm going to write a book for no one. And the people that love it will love it. Um, and it was very, I think, monumental for me to have these two experiences because I wrote female fantasy in the quiet months between the publication of 100 Other Girls and The Most Famous Girl in the World. And female fantasy is the first book that I really wrote from a place of joy and love. And I genuinely really think that when you read it, you can tell how much fun I had working on it. It leaps off of the page. The prose is joyful and funny and feels very much like an homage. It feels like an ode to like the great romantasy series and I don't know, like the framework of not just like romance authors, but letter writers and diary entries and the great practice of returning to the page in romance that like women and marginalized people have been participating in for centuries. I think you can feel that reverence and joy when you read the book. And it totally changed the experience of writing it for me. And that's why I sort of say, oh, it's been a healing process because I really fell back in love with the craft of
Mm-hmm.
writing. It was a wonderful reminder that the best part of writing a book is actually the writing of the book. And I think that also in the end of the day, um, having a book that you're coming at it from a place of calm, in that you've decided this is no longer a chance, but a career, it creates like a different sense of status when you're writing because you're not constantly hoping you're holding your breath, afraid that like the next sentence will be your last. And I don't know, I
Yeah.
think that all of that, I'm hopeful comes across in female fantasy. So yeah, in some ways it was short, like in some ways it took the full 3 years for me to ideate, write, and publish. But in other ways, I do believe that this is something that was percolating in the back of my brain for a long time because,
Mm-hmm.
as I mentioned, I've been a romance reader my entire life. I found romance as young as like YA romance at the Scholastic Book Fair. Um, and I felt just so grounded by the characters in YA and romance because I really feel like the genre is a true study in humanity and connection and like love in all its forms, not just romantic, but platonic and familial and self-love and, growing up in the States with a foot in two different worlds, the child of immigrants feeling really like a fish out of water. These are the books that sort of like helped me understand and perceive my own personhood more. But as that's happening, at the exact same time that's happening, I immediately start to get feedback from the adults in my life that these aren't the kinds of books I should be reading seriously, that these were trivial books, that they were guilty pleasures, that they were trashy. And I was sort of encouraged to either suppress or hide my love of the genre. But luckily, I am extremely stubborn and not only refused to do so, but I doubled down. And now here we are, decades later.
That's great. I mean, just hearing you talk about it, you can hear the enthusiasm. It sounds like
Yeah.
your first two novels were you finding a sort of outlet to express your kind of frustration with the world and the kind of troubled things
Mhm.
that you did, and then this one is just an expression of pure joy for the thing that you love and that you just kind of are having fun and playing with.
Absolutely. I think like I think that 100 Other Girls definitely, I would say you can read the frustration, and you
Mm-hmm.
feel that tension. The Most Famous Girl was more so like, okay, I said what I had to say. Now what do I want to say? And I looked
Yeah.
around and I took stock of, the cultural zeitgeist and social trends. And that story came to me quickly because it was all, grifters and scam artists and our obsession with bad people that make us feel good about ourselves. It felt like the undercurrent, the pulse of society at the time. Um, but I think like with female fantasy, I was really thinking about, yes, I could easily complain about the ways in which romance is treated as this sort of like trivial, perverted, escapist landscape. And I do, but I would so much rather speak with passion and vigor about how reading romance is actually inherently political. And every time you pick up a romance novel, you are engaging in a practice that seeks to chip away at, centuries old patriarchal structures that impact every single part of the world that we live in, one sentence at a time. I worked in sex and relationships for 10 years. And as a sex and relationships editor, I really learned, and my big red flag, other than my desire to bring mermaids back into the cultural discussion, is that I really do believe that all social inequities can be traced back to the sex education system, at least in the States. Our access to medically accurate sex education is extremely limited, and it creates a social conundrum in which women and marginalized people are isolated and have to learn about their bodies and their relationships, and everything from, sexuality and gender identity to sexual health and consent education in silo. And that really disenfranchises them from a very young age. Uh, the coolest part about romance, and not just romance as it's existed for centuries, but what's happened in modern day to romance in the last 5 to 10 years, is that women and marginalized people who have discovered romance are starting to take back that power, one book recommendation at a time. Because when romance readers are loud and proud about their love of reading, when they form community online on social media or through book clubs or book swaps or book recommendation videos, when they allow others to ask questions about healing from sexual trauma or kink exploration or communication and boundary building, what they're doing is they're creating powers through numbers. And knowledge is the true root of all power. And by refusing to safeguard and create this like taboo around reading and exploring anything that like centers pleasure, you are like undoing a great mechanism that seeks to keep you like small and quiet because it benefits those that have been in power for a long, long time. And I believe that so much. And that's why I really do think that like a romance novel can be as silly and predictable and frothy as you want it to be, or it can be as like short and dirty and dark as you want it to be. And still you are making like an inherently political badass choice by reading it and then meditating on it, contending with it, discussing with it. So yeah, I mean, this is like, I'm sure you can tell, like, this is truly something that I am so passionate about. It
Mm-hmm.
gets me so excited talking about it. And I really feel like I'm in a position where I can approach this topic of discussion not just as a lifelong fan of the genre, but also as someone who has a background in sex education and sex and relationships journalism, and understand that it's part of a much larger tradition and practice.
Okay, yeah, lots of food for thought there.
Big speech. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's great to hear your enthusiasm and passion for the genre as a whole and what you know
Mm-hmm.
what it stands for, and even if you don't realize it, the kind of impact that it's having just by you engaging with something. I was going to bring up the sex education stuff because you also had a YouTube series about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to know.
Oh, you know about No Shame Sex Ed?
It's on your website, so you directed me there.
Sure, but I don't think anyone ever has asked me about that. I'm very impressed.
The main thing I wanted to ask was, you know, having done that experience of doing that, you're very comfortable talking about sex and relationships and things, which is something that often people are kind of a bit, you know, closeted about and don't want to talk about so publicly. It can be awkward to discuss those things. Does that make it easier when you're writing to write like a particularly spicy scene?
Yeah. Look, I think that like sex is like any topic that makes people uncomfortable. By exposing to yourself to it, um, and bringing it up in conversation more often and reading about it and contending with it on a regular basis, it will start to lose its power and its ability to like frighten and cause anxiety and feel like a taboo structure that you can't go close to. I wasn't always comfortable talking about sex in this way. It was something that I had to learn through like repetition and looking at it from a, more academic perspective. And I don't know, I think that like one of the ways in which this is why language is so important. One of the ways that I would not to say women and marginalized people again, but we are sort of stripped of that power is by encouraging people to feel uncomfortable and almost puritanical around the concept of sex. Because at least in American society, young boys and young men are very like loud and outspoken about sex from a young age. And that's because they have access through what sex education is offered in popular media to, the ways in which they can seek pleasure through penetrative sex. And also that leads to joking about masturbation, joking about porn. Like these are the roots of locker room talk. Women don't have something similar. And that's why I do consider it, part of my job to talk about sex brazenly and without shame, because I don't think there's anything embarrassing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of writing sex scenes, I will say I find sex scenes incredibly difficult to write, because I want the sex scene to always feel earned and never gratuitous. I want the sex scene to work seamlessly inside of the character narrative. I want so much tension and yearning to be building towards the sex scene, and then I want the sex scene to feel like an organic reflection of where the people are at in their relationship. I want them to formulate a new conclusion at the end of the sex scene. It needs to, in some way, propel the story forward. And I think that writing chemistry, pure, honest chemistry, a quiet moment of understanding shared between two people is a lot more challenging than writing snappy dialogue or a big explosion.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the uh, most challenging parts of writing contemporary fiction. And so I left female fantasy with even more respect for authors of genre fiction, because I do think that, you know, writing connection and capturing that sort of like lightning in a bottle is way, way, way harder to do on page than it might seem in your
Yeah.
head. So more credit where credit's due, that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're not just writing chemistry between two characters, you're also writing, you need to have the chemistry working between two characters and then also the reader connecting with at least one of the characters.
Yep, it's really, really the masters of the craft contemporarily. I'm constantly just in awe of how good they are
Mm-hmm.
and how they are able to say so much in so few words and sentences. I think like the great romance authors today are able to capture a feeling without spelling it out for the reader, and I'm just constantly in awe of them. And
Yeah.
I don't think that being brazen about sex necessarily makes me a better writer of spicy scenes. Just because I'm comfortable talking about sex doesn't mean that um, I am just sort of able to skip all of the hard work that goes into making sure a sex scene is tightly written and clear and concise and dripping with chemistry, and both leaves the readers feeling satisfied and wanting more. Those are all things that require skill and patience and many revisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, but so I've spoken to some of my writing friends about this, and there is a sort of consensus that they're fine writing sex scenes and they're fine for like their book to go out and stuff, but they do sort of try to block out in their minds that their
Um,
parents and their grandparents are going to read those scenes. Do you feel like that as well?
Okay, I love this question. I so the good news about me is that I have been scandalizing my family for many years because of my
Okay.
background in sex and relationships. So I
Uh-huh.
really prepared them for the possibility that like something like this might happen one day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my sophomore novel, The Most Famous Girl in the World, was the first to include graphic open door sex scenes, and I gave the advanced copy of that book to my parents. I marked it like with sticky notes. I said, sex ahead, maybe skip. And neither of my parents skipped it. They both chose to read it, which I was very shocked by. So when the time came around for female fantasy, I warned them. I said, this book has two sex scenes. One is a contemporary sex scene. One is pretty freaky. Like it's a mermaid sex scene. Like, please be prepared. And they had two very different reactions. My mother immediately called my younger sister and said, "Oh my God, have you read Iman's sex scene? Have you read it in her latest novel?" And my younger sister was like, "Mama, I don't want to talk to you about this. Like, what made you think I would want to compare notes about this?" And immediately ended that conversation before it started. And then my father took a different approach in which he wrote pages and pages of analytical notes and
Wow.
basically approached it from an academic perspective. And I think in that way, he created some mental distance between
Right.
who wrote it and what was on page. So it, about 20 minutes into him comparing parts of the novel to traditional literature, I maybe zoned out a little bit, and I said,
Right,
"You know
sure.
what, Bubba, you got this one." But yes, I think like it was something that at first gave me a little bit of anxiety, but now that this is my third novel, and I feel a lot more confident in my ability to write spice. I I just feel like people should know what they're getting themselves into. And
Yeah.
yeah, similarly to my FMC Junie, something I love about that girl is whenever anyone tries to make her feel uncomfortable for being who she is or loving what she loves, she looks them square in the eye and challenges them. So I'm learning to just look people square in the eye.
Okay, great. Awesome. I love that range of experience from your parents there. Before we head over to the woodland cabin, I just had one more question for you. I feel like I had to ask, with female fantasy, what it's about and everything, in romantic fiction, of which I imagine you've read a lot. Do you
Mhm.
have a favorite book boyfriend?
So I've been getting this question a lot. Um, so on my tour stop in Brooklyn, I got asked what was the greatest love story of all time, which really is the worst question I've ever been
Yeah,
asked.
that's hard.
I was in conversation with Casey McCliston. I said, Casey, do you know? And we both sort of looked at each other like this is an evil line of inquiry. But
Hmm.
I ultimately said, this is probably extremely cheesy, but I think like all roads lead back to Pride and Prejudice. I think that I really do think
Yeah.
that Darcy is like the genesis of so many like grumpy boyfriends in popular culture.
Oh yeah.
Like so many people are trying to recreate the tension between Darcy and Lizzie.
Hmm.
So, um, I always sort of find myself meandering back to him. In contemporary romance, I think Emily Henry's Gus Everett is like it's almost like a Darcy, an evolved version
Yeah.
of Darcy if he was writing best-selling literary fiction and dealing with his childhood drama. Um, and I always harken back to that novel because it really was one of the, I feel like, contemporary romance novels that brought romance back into the mainstream conversation and created kind of a cult following amongst people who are perhaps embarrassed to admit that they'd been quietly reading romance in secret. And so I think
Yeah.
that um, I'm very grateful to Emily for the work that she's doing, and I always come back to Gus. Um, but yeah, other than that, like there's a lot of conversation around fan fiction in this book and fandom and the space that fangirls take up. And I
Hmm.
will say that I was a fan fiction girl myself. And my original fic that I was a part of was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Nice.
And I was a big, and this is controversial, but a big Spuffy girl. So people can read into that what they will. But that's got to be my
That's
my
Spike and Buffy,
penultimate
right?
three. That's Spike and Buffy. Yeah.
But they did have a thing at one point, so I guess it's not.
Spend very little time together, and even smaller amount of time you could argue happily together.
Okay,
But
right.
I think that they are just like so the blueprint for true enemies to lovers. I know there's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
discussion around who originated the concept, and they're definitely one of many forefathers.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So you must be excited then for this like Buffy reimagining that's coming out soon.
um, In
No.
some ways, yes. Okay, it's not that I'm not. Almost everything that I loved in childhood is getting a reboot or a remake.
True.
And I always have to safeguard my heart with these things because for me, I worry about like digging up the ground and reviving things that have been put to pasture for decades. I do think that like I've rewatched Buffy so many times in the past that I do think that like the magic of what was captured on screen really could have only existed in the time period that it was shot. And I
Yeah.
feel the same way about like the Princess Diaries or the cookbooks. Like I get a little anxious about whether those characters would be given the grace to exist the way that they did in the
Hmm.
90s and early 2000s in the year of our Lord and Savior 2025.
Oh, I forgot they were doing the Princess Diaries again.
Oh, again.
Yeah, you just reminded me.
I'm so sorry. Go home
Mm.
and Google some of those pictures.
Oh yeah, they're doing Devil Wears Prada as well. I'm thinking about Anne Hathaway.
Yep. It's
Um,
just,
yeah, I agree. I know what you mean. You need to stay guarded to these things. I don't want to get excited because I'm like,
yeah.
we've been burned so many times now with these reboot remake
Yeah.
things.
Let's
Yeah.
remain cautious as fans of of the existing
Yes.
franchise. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep them separate and be like, hopefully this will be good, but it won't tarnish the original thing. Okay. So that brings us to the point in the episode where I pack up your things and send you off to leave you. And this is the second episode I think that we're doing this. It used to be the desert island, but now the question is, Iman, if you were snowed in at a cozy woodland cabin in the middle of nowhere, what book would you hope to have with you?
Um, okay, I'm going to go with a book that is fresh in my mind, in that I read it in the past couple months. It's a rom-com called Any Trope But You, by Victoria Levine, about a romance novelist who's gets canceled by the internet after revealing that she actually is like a true cynic and doesn't believe in love and is just profiting off of it.
Okay.
And she is sent by her younger sister to a like wilderness camp in Alaska, where she's expected to spend 3 months holed up writing her first thriller. And while she is there, she experiences like a whirlwind romance that seems to follow all of the popular conventions of contemporary romance. And it's like the universe is throwing red flags in her face, that she shouldn't abandon the genre just yet. And
That's great.
it was so good. It was a debut. I wish I had seen more people talking about this because I really had so much fun reading it. And it was also so tender at times. And I bring it up though, because it is a true, like, snow capped, melting the ice off your fingers by the fire, like, curling up with a hot drink book. It
Hmm.
is extremely cold in Alaska when she's there. And I think it has all the makings of a cozy, tender winter read.
Amazing. That's perfect. Yeah, that's great. That also sounds really funny. I can also picture that 100% being a movie straight away.
Yeah.
It just works, right?
Yeah, I would love that. If anyone's listening, please option Victoria Levine's rights.
That'd be a great movie.
Mhm.
Awesome. That brings us to the end of the first half of the episode. Next up, we are going to get into a bit more of the publishing side of things, Iman's journey into publishing and her experiences throughout. That will be in the extended episode, which will be available at patreon.com/right and wrong.
I promise you, it is better to have a messy manuscript than a single perfect paragraph. So finish that draft.
Yes, exactly. Something I always end up saying on the podcast along those lines is that you can't edit a blank page. So like,
Yep.
you've got to finish it before you can start even thinking about what the next step is. Great
And
advice.
revising is such an important part of writing, and
Yeah.
it is can be as rewarding. And this is less classy, more crass, but I often say like even if you feel like certain chapters are just complete and utter shit. Sometimes you can return to it a week later and you'll be surprised you may have shit gold.
Excellent. What a great way to end the podcast there. Thank you so much, Iman.
Thanks for having me. This is so much fun.
Yes, it's been so fun chatting with you and hearing all about your publishing journey and writing and everything. And for everyone listening, Female Fantasy is out right now in all the usual places. If you want to keep up with what Iman is doing, you can find her on Instagram and TikTok at Iman Hariri-Kia, or on her website, imanharirikia.com. To support this podcast, like, follow and subscribe. Join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcasts, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Iman, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.